Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 5 Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. Coming up on this week's episode, details on the proposed breakup of Google. Also, more devices blocked from upgrading to Windows 24 H2, and job growth forecast for IT roles in 2025. For this and more, keep listening to this episode of the podcast, which, of course, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. And that includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops. And also brought to you by Master Packager, who make an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. In an update to a story I've covered on multiple previous episodes of this podcast, the U.S. Department of Justice is now providing specifics on what it is calling for to curtail Google after its antitrust case, where it was argued that Google had an unfair advantage and captive audience for its advertising business via its browser, exclusivity agreements with the likes of Apple to make Google their default search engine on iPhones, and with the Android OS. The Department of Justice is calling for Google to divest its Google Chrome business, and they even suggested divestment of the Android business too. Apart from this, they're also calling for an end to existing and future exclusivity agreements with the likes of Apple and Samsung. The department also said that Google could be prohibited from giving its search service preference within its own products too. The Department of Justice also said that remedies should prevent Google from eliminating, quote, emerging competitive threats through acquisitions, minority investments, or partnerships, end quote. The Department of Justice also went on to say that the proposed remedies run for a period of 10 years. The filing also says the search company should be required to provide a technical committee with a monthly report outlining any changes to its search text ads auction, saying the proposed remedies are designed to end Google's unlawful practices and open up the market for rivals and new entrants to emerge. So it would be interesting if this is imposed for 10 years. I think I've said on a previous episode of the podcast that this is in effect trying to close the gate after the horse has already bolted. And it's ironically coming at a time when, Google's own business is under threat because AI such as ChatGPT is threatening search engines. So it could be a case of, too little, too late. It would also be interesting to see what the implications of this would be for the actual Chromium code base that is used in other browsers that are not Google Chrome. And like I said on last week's episode, US regulators, who are supposed to act somewhat independent to the actual federal government, tend to be influenced by those in power, and the presidency is going to change in January, so perhaps this type of curtailment is going to be short-lived, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It was a rough start to the week, as many experienced Office 365 issues with the likes of Exchange Online, Outlook, and Teams issues being reported, including an inability to send emails, sites crashing, and error messages appearing on screens. Microsoft indicated that this was an instance of an update gone wrong and causing issues, so they had to back out their change, but indicated backing out the change was slower than anticipated, with people reporting problems that spanned hours. And I know that I was traveling on Monday and I was trying to send an email to someone, and it took quite some time to just get that email out of my outbox. And I seemed to have issues trying to get to the file that I needed to send an email out of Teams. So yeah, it was a bad start to the week. Thanks to the Patch Mail group for sharing that Microsoft posted an advisory about the Copilot app perhaps getting auto-installed on some managed devices. And it appears this is affecting Windows 11 version 24H2, version 23H2, version 22H2, and Windows 10 version 22H2. These reports are from IT administrators who are managing Windows updates in devices in enterprise and business environments specifically, according to the advisory. And you can remove the Copilot app from work devices in your environment, and Microsoft have supplied some workarounds for this. They also supplied some steps that you could take if you would like to prevent the installation of the Copilot app on your machines using app locker policies. They have said that they are currently investigating the reports of the Copilot app getting auto-installed on devices and hope to provide more information soon. Microsoft has announced their Get Licensing Ready site for education customers to get education licensing information will be retired on January 1st. If you use this site for reference for your licensing information, they want you to switch to a new dedicated licensing page that you can find at microsoft.com/licensing. Copilot Plus PC users in the Windows Insider program have started to get access to the recall feature. The rollout is currently limited to those with Snapdragon processors. And to use Recall, you must have the appropriate hardware and be in the dev channel and installing the Windows 11 preview build 26120.2415. There are other prerequisites like needing Secure Boot enabled and BitLocker, but my guess is most already on Windows 11 should already meet these requirements, particularly those on supported hardware who are not using any funky workarounds. Support for AMD and Intel-powered Copilot Plus PCs will also be added soon, according to bleepycomputer.com. Yet more PCs are being prevented from upgrading to Windows 11 24H2. Those with games such as Assassin's Creed, Star Wars Outlaws, and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora will now be unable to take the latest version after changes in the operating system are causing the games to crash, freeze, or have audio issues. BleepyComputer.com also reports that they are blocking computers with USB scanners that support the ESCL protocol, which is a driverless scanning protocol that works over Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and USB connections. The list of impacted devices includes standalone scanners and other devices with scan functionality, such as multifunction printers, fax machines, modems, and other network devices with the protocol support. The issue for these devices that leads to the block is that those who received Windows 11 24H2 with those devices were unable to discover devices. Microsoft is obviously going to work on reaching a long-term solution for this, but at this time, upgrades are blocked, and obviously don't try to work around and upgrade for yourself because you're going to encounter issues. Since the last episode of the podcast, reports started to surface of issues uninstalling applications such as Teams on some Windows 10 machines. This was after an update to a WinApp SDK version 1.6.2 on Windows 10 22H2 machines. Those affected saw the "something happened on our end" error message in the Microsoft Store's downloads panel, while IT admins saw a 0x80073CFA error when trying to manage packaged applications using the get-appx package in PowerShell. Microsoft pulled the WinApp SDK package and subsequently released a preview update as a fix to the issue. But interestingly, as bleepycomputer.com reports, they then subsequently released a version 1.6.3 version of the WinApp SDK, and oddly, they're requesting those affected to not use the previously supplied preview update as a fix, and instead take the latest version and install it 3 times. So they've produced this package as a fix, but for those who are affected, which hopefully is not everyone, and hopefully it's not a lot of people, they'll have to install it 3 times. Gah, yikes. Swedish authorities are reportedly launching an investigation into the rollout of Oracle Cerner across Swedish health facilities, according to the Register. The issues with the rollout involves missing or lost words in health records rather than a security breach or data being stolen. The regional government spokesperson said the incidents are, quote, either linked to unforeseen technical problems with the start of operations and/or that routines for handling data that have not been sufficiently implemented, end quote. A spokesperson said on November 12th, the software went live in one hospital, as well as several health centers, including in physiotherapy units. This initial deployment represented a small proportion of the healthcare system in the region. The scrutiny is perhaps not surprising, though, as the rollout of the EHR is estimated to cost $190 million, and the authorities are bringing forward a scheduled review of the software's use. Disappointingly, the issues are occurring despite preparations for the rollout starting all the way back in 2018. So, you read that and you're like, oh, they're trying to quell concerns that this is some sort of like security issue or data breach. But they're saying this is a problem with the implementation, and this is an implementation that the planning started for back in 2018. So is it a case of bad planning, or is it a case the software is bad? Now, I worked in healthcare for most of my career, I believe. I haven't done the maths recently. A few years have passed since I did. But I've encountered hospitals with Cerner, and the software has worked just fine. It would be interesting to see what their investigation finds and who is possibly at fault for the bugs or the poor implementation in this instance. Nvidia have reportedly created an AI model called Fugato that is capable of generating or transforming virtually any mix of music using any combination of audio files or text prompts. The Fugato name is derived from Foundational Generative Audio Transformer Opus 1. It can create a tune based solely on text, change the emotion in a singer's voice, or modify their accent, and even add or remove instruments from an existing song. With it, a producer could quickly prototype an idea for a new song, complete with custom voice styles and instruments, or adjust effects in an existing track, according to a report by TechSpot.com. It's believed AI and tools like this will help write the next chapter for music, but it is not limited just to music production. Other use cases exist, such as modifying voiceovers for ads, creating assets for video games, and more. Personally, I'm not a fan, and just me speaking here, if I go to a gig or a concert to see a musician perform, it's because I admire their skill and their talent, and I want to see them do this impressive thing. AI creating the music and then perhaps a musician performing it live is not going to be as impressive to me. I'm probably not going to pay to go see that, to be honest. Using it in voiceovers, it will suck if it starts to affect jobs for those voiceover actors. I guess I'm less skeptical to that, though, because it's not like I go to see a voice actor performing live. But yeah, I don't know about this AI for like music, for films, for video games, that kind of thing. The end result is impressive because it's something that humans have created. And if we know that it's AI creating it, will it be as impressive? Will you be inclined to pay your hard-earned money on something that is completely computer generated? I don't know. I mean, we could see already in films, for example, these high budget action movies, like the comic book movies. Personally, I'm not all that into it, and it seems to me that like CGI is actually seemingly getting worse. Some of the films now look terrible in some of the action sequences. Whereas you go back to something like Jurassic Park or Jaws, and to me those films still hold up. Anyways, I'm ranting. I try not to give my opinion all that much. This is more about reporting news, but yeah, just another instance of how AI is infiltrating different industries. ITPro.com shared Robert Half's 2025 salary guide, and it found that 46% of IT and tech hiring managers are planning to add new positions for permanent, full-time members of staff in 2025. A quarter are also planning to bring more contract talent into their firms to support certain projects and growth plans. There is reportedly reluctance, however, among tech workers already within jobs to move due to job security concerns, with 43% of staff placing a greater level of importance on job stability than salary. 48% also want to see financial allowances for working from home incorporated into employee offerings, with a significant portion willing to take a cut in pay for the benefit of work from home. Aside from job security, the data showed that 50% of IT and technology professionals would like access to sabbaticals or paid leave of absence, while a further 48% want financial allowances for working from home offered by their employers as a benefit. An additional 37% would like access to extended parental leave. Hopefully this is accurate, and hopefully there is going to be hiring in 2025 because it's been a rough few years in our particular area of work. And I would think, just going off the stats that I've been sharing many months from StatCounter on Windows 11 adoption, with the Windows 10 end of support looming, and the fact that there still is no announcement of a Windows 12 that people might go to instead, it seems like a lot of organizations are now going to scramble to try and get Windows 11 deployed. So they may need that help next year. So hopefully that does create a boon of employment. A recent firmware push to QNAP network-attached storage devices left a number of owners unable to access their storage systems, according to Ars Technica. The company has now pulled back the firmware and issued a fixed version. Customers have been reporting on forums that the issue goes beyond what QNAP have said, claiming more devices than those listed by the company have been affected, and that issues reported included owners being rejected as an authorized user, devices reporting issues with booting, and claims of Python not being installed to run some apps and services. QNAP says affected users can either downgrade their devices and then upgrade once more to get the fixed update, or contact support for help. The response from QNAP support, according to some of the users on forums and social media, has not measured up to the nature of losing access to an entire backup system. And obviously, losing that access is going to create panic and urgency from customers. So I guess they would expect that kind of urgency from support. BelievingComputer.com reported on a story involving a man from Kansas who breached the networks of a health club business and a nonprofit organization. Upon breaching the networks, he sent a message to the businesses telling them they had been breached and then offering his services for security consulting. On the face of it, he sounds naive, but he did more than just try to get himself a job. Weeks later, the suspect posted a screenshot on social media showing the gym's security camera system under his control. And later, on May 20th, the indictment says he physically breached a nonprofit organization and accessed a restricted area where he used a boot disk to bypass authentication requirements and gain access to sensitive information. He allegedly installed a VPN on the nonprofit's computer and changed account passwords. The Department of Justice says his actions cost an estimated loss of $5,000 to the nonprofit, which had to remediate the intrusion and secure their systems following the intrusion. Finally, he's also been accused of using stolen credit card information from his former employer, a third-party company, to purchase hacking thumb drives designed to exploit vulnerable systems. If proven guilty, the man will face sentences of up to 15 years in prison, fines, and restitution to the victims for their financial losses. The FBI is investigating him for 3 incidents, so there's likely at least one other business that he did this to, not just the club and the nonprofit. But now for this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. Thanks to Doug Finke, who shared this first one on Blue Sky earlier this week. There's a really cool interactive map of Ignite news. So if you listened to last week's episode of the podcast, I tried my best to cover as many of the announcements as I could. But if you would like a cool way to actually view some of the announcements for yourself, there's a really nice interactive chart that you can use, and I'll share that with this episode, which is episode 362, and you can find the link at 5bytespodcast.com. Also from Blue Sky, I saw that Sarah Drasner shared a tip to remember if you're on a Mac, you can clean up your desktop by having screenshots sent to another folder. And she shares a tip for how to do this, so in future when you're creating snapshots, or screenshots rather, they're not going to be going to the desktop folder. Finally, it's obviously Thanksgiving in the US, which means Black Friday, and also Cyber Monday, which is next Monday, and that means deals. So you can get deals on software and hardware at the moment. For example, I saw NordVPN is giving a discount again. I saw that Adobe is giving like 50% off this suite. So now is a good time to make those purchases if you're in the market for new hardware or if you're in the market for software. Hopefully my voice didn't sound too different today. I was in London at EUC Forum and there was a whole lot of talking and also some shouting. So my voice is pretty strained. But thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next week.